Hello and welcome everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce Nels Long. Nels Long has been my friend for quite a few years, where we met each other at a conference and then seen each other in LA and lately in Prague this winter. Nels is a co-founder of RoTo and a lecturer at SCI-Arc. He has been always working with gamification, also collaborating with Pliny Fisk and other ecological systems. And why he is invited to the session is that our Synergetic Landscape unit is also working with gamification, maybe quite different than the gamification with which Nels is working, but let's see what he is showing. And Nels is now starting to work with gamifying ecosystems, which is super interesting for us. So Nels, please welcome, and the stage is yours.
Great, thank you, Marie, and hello, everyone. Good morning from California. Good evening to you all. So yeah, I was pleased when Marie asked me to make this presentation. It really it gave me an opportunity to go back and kind of catalog what has got me to the place that I am, because gamification, I realized, was really a constant throughout my practice from my undergraduate studies at Mississippi State University through my time at the Center for Maximum Potential Building Systems, working with Pliny Fisk, through, it really led me to pursue the master's that I did at SCI-Arc, which was Emerging Systems Technology and Media, which is what kind of got me to where I am today, working with Michael Rotondi and the interesting stuff that we're doing there. So I had all of my hard drives out from way back when, stuff that never made it onto the cloud, and going through and finding old files, and it was really exciting for me. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of weave all of that together into something that approaches a coherent presentation today. But it's been a lot of fun for me just to produce this, so thank you for that opportunity. I want to start off this morning. Oh, and just to clarify, we have what, about an hour, Marie? How long do we have?
We have our, if you want to continue longer, you can. Is okay.
Okay. Okay, let's see, because we've got a couple options along the way to possibly add some time if people are having fun. So before I go into it, this is a quote from Michael Rotondi that really does a lot to encapsulate the work that we do. So our natural resilience and capacity for invention allows us to constantly face these challenges with optimism and invention through creativity and play. And play is the primary activity that we strive to engage in throughout our work, not just in the production of work, but in the actions of the occupants within our projects. And we're constantly looking for how we can bring in informal learning through play. So for just a real world example of that, we're currently in what we hope is the final design process for a large municipal aquatic center right on the beach in Long Beach, California, which is just south of LA. And the design was built into the environment such that the community, even if they weren't coming to the pool, there would be all of these additional accessory uses around the perimeter of the building that provided opportunity for play, but that play would also have a certain amount of learning built into it, either about the natural ecosystems or about the urban systems at play, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of our mantra of our work. And what I'm going to be doing today is kind of identifying a series of projects according to the 6 entry points into this that we've identified. So starting with the most low tech, being trading card games, which are one of my favorite uh, game mediums, and working all the way up through board games, video games, digital tools, virtual reality experiences, to the actual physical places where these activities take place, and then looking at how platforms um, can be built to integrate each one of these interfaces into a singular kind of branded experience, which is our latest project, which I'll go into further later on. As we're going along, feel free to interrupt with any questions. I'm gonna keep this super casual, so don't hesitate to interrupt me along the way. So let's just dive right in then. So um, I worked for Plenty Fisk for about a year back in 2009, 2010. And at that time, we were looking at how to take his EcoBalance community planning protocol and develop a game that could engage with the local community. And we did that in a number of, that was embodied in a number of projects. So community supported architecture was something that we were looking at more locally within the Texas region. And then the Island Nations Initiative was a project that we developed for Haiti in the aftermath of the hurricane that really and that really devastated them down there, and earthquakes. They kind of got hit hard that year. So what we initially started doing was looking at how we could begin to encapsulate a certain amount of building system information onto a card, and how that card would be representative of a certain amount of community input, a certain amount of resource management, and so those cards could be collected and traded in order to symbolize the actual collecting and trading of real world resources. So this is just kind of showing how the card was designed. Up here in the top left, there's a number of little hexagons, and the different colors correspond to the different categories of the ecobalance system, which is food, materials, energy, water, and air, moving from left to right here. Um, and then there's this little icon on the right side here, which talks about how many of the building system components do you need to produce whatever this card is for. So this particular card is stairs. One thing that I think often gets left out of gamification processes is the storytelling component. Games are nonlinear storytelling devices. And so throughout all of our work, we're constantly looking at how we can use storytelling as a device within the design process, whether it's a full-blown world building project, which we've done a number of with Alex McDowell and others, or it's just simply a little hook to kind of keep you invested in the project. So there is a little story component here. And then we began to work out the gameplay. So if you're playing this, excuse me, if you're playing this card game with various community members, how do you begin to um, exchange assets and basically build your community by placing cards and trading cards and paying for those cards with tokens that represent food, water, materials, etc. And then the building system itself is encapsulated into those cards. So each one of these pieces um, has a card that represents it, and those cards can then be traded or collected or built when you pay the cost. So this would be based off of a game like Magic the Gathering, or in some cases even more role-playing type games like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And so we're constantly looking at that asymmetrical gameplay that is becoming very popular, and looking at how we can use that as a metaphor for in this case community planning. And then how does that card game um, get integrated into a much greater network? So this was back in 2009, so we thought we were really fancy when we were using Grasshopper, so that's why that was called out there. But but here we have the eco balance system, we have the storytelling, we have the building system, we have the parametrics, we have the card game, we have an app, we have a cloud-based green rating system, and that was all integrated into this idea of community-supported architecture. We then took that and we created um, proposal for this competition for providing disaster relief to Haiti, and it was building upon that same card system. Although we went even further with the development of the card design, which you can see here, and those were broken down into components and tools and cultivars, actions, items, etc., and according to the life cycle of source, process, use, and resource. And we had little building parts that would go along with it. So rather than playing a card to the middle, you would actually be kind of assembling. And when I say you, I mean the community that is coming together around a big circular table to play this game is actually building a scale model of their community based on the information that is encoded into that trading card game. We would then, take it a step further, and we built our own full-scale mock-ups and models, and we did all the calculations to figure out exactly how many of these could fit on a container truck or a shipping container. We did research to figure out, what are the bare essentials that would need to go into something like this if you're rebuilding from scratch. Everything from mosquito nets and diapers to soap and batteries, and kind of, so what are the seeds and soil, bags of soil, what goes into these as kind of standalone components, and then connecting that with an online website, what we called our Innovators Forum, where you could invent new ways of assembling the building system components, and then make those blueprints available online for open source download. And so this is really the project that kicked it off for me, where I realized the sheer extent that gaming has in a design process, and it's it really became kind of the foundation for the work that I've been doing since then. When I started working with Michael in 2014, we were also looking at the use of trading cards, but this time we were looking at the use of trading cards as a teaching tool. So RoTo Architects is by definition a teaching practice. Michael's work is so closely integrated into SCI-Arc. A moment. Into SCI-Arc, as a founder of SCI-Arc and longtime director of SCI-Arc, everything that is done in his professional practice is inextricably linked with his educational practice. And so we looked at how we could create a set of cards that would illustrate um, the character types that we wanted our students to study. So not necessarily identifying with one or another of these groups, but thinking about how each of these characters would approach a problem, and how each one of these characters would play a role in the project once it was created. And often our projects are not um, strictly building related. Most of the time, when I say our projects, I mean our projects at SCI-Arc, that we give our students. They're most often programming problems, creating new types of program, and then envisioning an architecture to contain that program. And so the creation of these cards, which we hired a local illustrator to produce for us, um, Elliot Bate, um, was, we had them printed and distributed to our students, and it was part of a series of games that we built for our studio to kind of play as a design tool. And so it may be as simple as drawing a card at random and then working that day for that person, for that character, figuring out how a scientist would envision that space versus a strategist, and so on and so forth. And so these are still today tools that we use. So then we start getting into the realm of more integrated gaming systems. In this case, I'm talking about board games. So maybe there are cards, maybe there are dice, maybe there's a board. Maybe the board is set, maybe the board changes. And so in 2016, we began looking at the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and we started looking at how we could gamify the lessons of the Fourth Industrial Revolution into a board game. Um, we did that through a number of studios, and I'm just going to show you a couple of the best games that came out of that. Um, this one is called Alternative. It's a board game for um, surviving the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Uh, in this in this game, you would basically assemble a board layer after layer. So first Industrial Revolution, second, third, fourth, and you had to make critical decisions about either accepting technology and integrating it, or rejecting technology and pushing it away. And those decisions were manifest in these in these diagrams. Um, there was also a regional component to it as well. Basically, certain decisions would be different in North America than they would be in Australia or Central Europe, for example. And there were different processes. So, extraction of resources, trimming off the things that are not needed, and then ultimately embodying that into a decision. And then those get built into three-dimensional form, and you could actually build up a board game with various bridges connecting different cultures, connecting different aspects of the change that was brought about by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the little flags signify a player's stake to a certain technology or to a certain way of life that was brought about due to that Industrial Revolution. Um, the next game is called Free Agent Nation Developer. Free Agent Nation is a book by Daniel Pink that was required reading for this studio. Really great book talking about the current working environment and the gig economy and things like that. And so every student had to put together, in this case, group of students had to put together a rule book that basically instructed you how to play, and you could see the character cards and the skill cards coming back up again. And in this case, I have a little video of them actually playing the game here. So as you move around the board, um, you are uh, um, collecting resources and interacting with events that are brought about by the various industrial revolutions. And so you may start off with farming and mining and things like that, and then you may start having more advanced cultural institutions like schools and restaurants, and then you may start getting into factories and things like that, and then you start getting into information technology, and you start getting into cultural technologies and things like that. And so as they're moving around the board, they're literally leveling up as they move through the various stages of civilization's development. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here so you can see it. It gets pretty cool. And what we really liked about this game was it had an architectural component to it. Now, extruded hexagons are not the most interesting architectural form, but the way that the game became a three-dimensional piece was pretty interesting to us. Oops. Which brings us on then to the core studio that Michael and I taught last fall. Um, in this one, we really wanted to see. Um, so this is the first studio that I taught. I didn't teach last spring. This is the first studio that I taught during COVID, and we were on Zoom all day, every day, as all of us were, and continue to be in many cases. And I was trying to figure out how do we move past Zoom. All right, so Michael and I spent a long time discussing, and we hired an intern last summer to go through kind of a review of what games were out there, what platforms were out there that would allow us to do user-generated multiplayer games. And we looked at Roblox, and we looked at Minecraft, and we looked at a lot of them, and we found this this game called, or this platform called Core. Um, and it was interesting because they were right at the very beginning of their development. And Core is built on the Unreal Engine game development system, and you can create a game very simply, and it's instantly multiplayer. And so we thought, well, what if we do an entire studio inside of Core? So that's what we did. So we had about 12 students. To show you 6 of them today. Um, we hosted our class inside of a virtual mock-up of SCI-Arc, which I'll show you in a moment. And from, uh-oh, sorry, I lost a window. Not really sure how I did that. Let's see here. So from within that virtual copy of SCI-Arc, um, we would we would meet in the lecture hall, which is called Keck Hall, every day, and from that virtual lecture hall, we would then go out into. This is the link that I sent you guys, so you could actually join me in here if you wanted to. So we would meet here for class every day, and then each student would have their own studio space. So this is modeled to look, it's almost exactly like SCI-Arc. So each student has a room, and then this chair is a placeholder for a portal that'll take you to their project. And there's all of these virtual showcases that show the different types of uh, virtual operations that you can have. And what we were really exploring was the idea of a virtual site. So we gave them 4 placeholders. We gave them an earth world, we gave them a water world, we gave them an air world, and we gave them an energetic world, based very loosely off of the um, the 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 elements. So each each student was responsible for researching their elemental context, looking for natural or sorry, native stories and mythologies to bring into their environments, and then putting together a concept design and actually building it out in Core. So I'm just going to take you through a couple videos real fast, and I think we have time. I'm just going to let these play through.
Yeah, we
Oh
have
wait,
time, definitely. Yeah.
let me I'm going to reshare real fast to make sure that I have my sound and everything on. So if you'll let me know if you can hear.
We don't hear anything at the moment.
How about now?
No, no.
I should have tested this out with you before. So I've got my share on. I've got share sound and optimize for video clip when I share. Oops. Any ideas why that's not coming through?
No.
Let's see. Share sound is on. I'm just going to switch to my system sounds for a minute and see if that helps. Let's try now.
Of the ocean,
Yes.
far from any other land, 2 gods watch over a small archipelago. One is the protector of its stone cliffs, and the other tends to their surrounding waters. Spiritual energy covers the island, cascading down from the mountain's peak and flowing up from the sea. Thus, the people of the island inhabit some of its most difficult terrain in order to take in its strongest energy flows. In return for their efforts, the people are rewarded with prosperity that, when offered back to the spirits of the islands, empowers the gods. This allows the two spirits to multiply that prosperity in the form of resources, abilities, and knowledge. Their devotion to the spirits is inseparable from their architecture. The island's residents have developed a building system driven by connection, both to the land and each other. These structures take hold on the cliff faces and over the water, then reach out to hold up subsequent buildings, which are added on as the community needs them. The architecture is able to adapt to any place on the island, giving the people the freedom to live, work, and worship wherever is most spiritually fruitful for them. The bulk of the community lives in the sprawling structure that spans the island's gorge. It is aligned to the island's primary spiritual and physical axes. This is where resources are processed and stored, children are raised, and the community gathers. Everything in the village flows through here. The village's monastery perches on the edge of a sea cliff. It hangs over the intersection of the island's two most powerful energy lines. In devoting themselves to worship, the people of the island are able to bring in the gods' favor in return for resources and knowledge. The buildings here are clad in a special brick made with the sacred clay from the mountain spring. The fishing village in the bay hovers just over the water. It's supported by the same structures that anchor the buildings on the mountain. Workers here tend to the ocean farms, which pen in fish and float over kelp gardens. Despite the difficult terrain, the people of the island have been able to prosper through their reverence to the gods. In return for their piety, they are provided with both essential resources and valuable knowledge.
So that was Andrew's project. He was our TA for that class and also our intern the summer
In the
before.
middle
So
of the ocean,
he
far from
produced the vast majority of the stuff that you see coming out of, or the infrastructure, the model for SCI-Arc and a lot of the virtual showcases he produced. We're going to go on to the next one. Okay, so that was Charles Song's project, and it was maybe not immediately clear what was happening. So um, there was a discovery of this lost monument kind of in this cave system, and the protagonist that we're seeing the world through her eyes um, discovered this artifact that gave her this special ability to kind of scan through and almost have like this X-ray vision of the environment that they were studying. And so it kind of there was a flashback to the previous civilization that erected the monument, and then a flash back to present time where she was then able to use that newfound ability to enhance her work in understanding this past civilization. And so this is one of the ones that we thought did a really great job of kind of bending reality and kind of using storytelling in a more fictional, more fantastical way to achieve a pretty extraordinary space. This is one of the spaces that I think you will have the most fun kind of going into and playing around with, and just kind of starting to explore this underground world. Next we have, this is Damien's project. Okay, so in Damien's project, he was really focusing on, and this might be a good point to kind of stop and talk about the site. So, these are virtual worlds. There's, that they had to create. So the first half of the semester, they had to create their own site, and then they had to build upon that site, which was tricky because there was no found condition for them to explore. They had to first create the found condition and then develop it. And what he was really focusing on was creating an extremely site-specific experience that kind of collapsed time on itself. So there's this part of the map that focuses on this kind of past civilization, and then the story goes that there was some sort of conflict that split the communities apart, and forced them into these mountainous dwellings, and then over time, you know as they built out the interior of these mountains, um, that they kind of moved past their differences and kind of culminated in this bridge that brings the communities back together. And I thought he just did a really good job kind of bringing bringing the architecture up to the same level of thinking as the same level of conception as the environment. He spent a huge amount of time developing the I'm trying to find a good still frame for us to just kind of look at here. He spent a huge amount of time just developing the landscape and all the trees and everything down to the birds and ecosystems and things like that. And then the architecture just kind of naturally came out of it, which Michael and I felt was really quite nice. Um, this next project by Desmond Fregosa. Um, he was the only person that picked energy as his core element. Uh, and we just had a lot of fun talking about how do you develop architecture in a world where nothing is material, where everything is just simply energy, right? What forms does that energy take that approximates an architecture, and how would you circulate through that world, and what would what would it even look like, right? And so I think he did a pretty good job with this. I'm just going to play it. We can talk more after. So essentially, in this world, there are um, areas where the energy that is in the core of this place is kind of bursting forth and ejecting these uh, energetic manifestations out into the sky. But because they're so highly magnetized, they just kind of float there. So they're not falling back down. And it's this pool of plasma basically that is generating this really intense um, magnetic field, and you can actually go down into the plasma. He also has some really interesting ways of navigating, which I'm hoping he'll show a little bit more of, where he would actually you could beam yourself across the map, so you could point at something and kind of teleport yourself there. This is one of those that uh, you really need to play it to understand just how impressive it is. So we can do that in a moment. I'm going to actually skip to the next one. This is Grigory's project, and in Grigory's project, he was really taking the idea of the origin story to heart. Um, he chose the flood as his origin story, and basically it became the foundation for a new civilization. Um, this civilization moved up into the trees, and it also began to develop uh, a genetic science for developing new types of trees that would grow bigger and taller and be more um, able to withstand floods in the future. And so he's one of the only students that took on the air world as his elemental world, and same way that uh, Desmond was looking at everything from circulation and building form. Grigru in the energetic world, Grigru was doing the same thing in the air world. So there's all sorts of things that you can climb. There are uh, little like cars that move horizontally as well as elevators and things that move you up and down. And then each one of the little pods that's hanging from the trees is uh, fully like you can go inside it and everything. And so part of his project is this research center where he actually has portals from the current time into these sorts of simulations that are used to remind the people of his civilization why they are where they are today, so that they don't fall into the same uh, um, uh, uh, negative lifestyles that got them to where they are today. So, and he just has those kind of they're like portals to other virtual places. So it was a really interesting use of, again, kind of collapsing time given the virtual medium to explore occupying two different timelines kind of simultaneously. I think this is the last one. This is Shia's project. And she was, I think, the only one that took on water as her elemental. So in this world, there's an underwater world and there's an above water world, and there's a species that lives in the water and there's a species that lives above the water, and they began to create kind of a new species that is hybrid that can move between them. And so her project was looking at how would you create an amphibious civilization for creatures that could move between living on land and living in the water, and what are the types of resources that are required for that? What are the different types of circulation that are required for that? How would you design a community center that is an underwater community center? So it was just a really exciting, um, and she I think more than anybody else really took on a parallel design track of designing out these spaces using drawing that she then built in the game, as opposed to a lot of the work that was just it was just built directly within the game, and kind of prototyped in real time, which was an interesting workflow. Let's see. Yeah, so that's that for the SCI-Arc projects, and we have the ability to go in and play that. Let me get through the rest of my slides real quick. I'm almost done, and then if we'd like to go back and revisit any of those worlds, definitely do that. In our professional practice, we're also using a certain amount of gamification. In this case, we're working for a nonprofit called Wolf Connection. Wolf Connection is a group that rescues wolves that people think they can have as pets, and then realize that maybe having a wild animal at home is not a great idea, and that happens more often than I'm proud to admit. Or maybe it's an animal that is the offspring of a wolf and a domestic dog that was either bred that way or so on and so forth. Um, so he rescues these animals from euthanasia, and he has a ranch where he keeps them, and he has all sorts of amazing youth empowerment programs with city schools and foster care systems and things to come out and learn more about themselves by being around with the wolves. So we developed a fundraising tool for him that basically created a topo model of the site with the proposed development for his ranch that you can then inhabit. And we actually had this linked to, this is a VR experience built in Unity that we had that we set up at his fundraising campaigns. And the progress bars over the various buildings are actually tied to a database that shows how much progress has been made towards funding that particular building. So Willow is one of the main wolves in his pack, and we elected that she be our guide for this. So she will kind of take you around the settlement and show you, or the development, and show you the various buildings and what they're used for. And then you can see there, like, for example, the cafeteria is 65% funded, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna, yeah, so she'll take you around. So this is something that we did as a commercial product for a client that he uses when fundraising. Second Studio is a project that came from my thesis at SCI-Arc and brought it into Michael's studio, and we built up a company around it. We spent about 3 years developing Second Studio, and for, due to lack of funding, we had to discontinue development on it. But it is available open source on GitHub for anybody that wants to use it, and I do hope that one day it sees some life. It's a virtual reality design and engineering, not really engineering, design and visualization platform that has full 3D modeling capabilities. It's been built on as part of a platform that incorporates a blockchain that uses that stores the metadata on a blockchain, so you can work collaboratively with a team of designers on a project, and all of the models that you create are registered on that blockchain, so that there's a certain amount of credit that is automatically assigned. So if you're working on a large team, you have the option to kind of retain ownership of the assets that you've developed, which was something that was important to us because it is a virtual reality program, and so many of the virtual reality programs that are out there, you're just inside of kind of a normal room, right? There's or just a white space. There's not a lot of thought that's been put into the environment that you're in. So a lot of the work that we do, we partner with neuroscientists to kind of understand what's happening in the brain when you are in a specific environment, you're in a specific space. And so here we actually had a range of like 6 studio spaces and like 12 environments. And so you could actually put yourself in an environment where you felt more comfortable, maybe more productive, maybe more creative. And just to kind of show a quick little video here of kind of how it works. So one of the things that we were interested in when we were developing this is getting away from the idea that you have to click an icon in order to do something, that you should pick up a tool. So, when you're in a workshop and you need to cut a piece of wood, you take that piece of wood to a tool and you use that tool. But for whatever reason, when you're drawing, you're clicking icons and you're you know everything is 2D. So we created a tool wall like you would see in a wood shop of various tools that you can then um, either create objects, manipulate objects, so on and so forth. You can lock your everything is can be snapped to a grid. You can lock your axes. You can extrude. You can draw lines, extrude lines into faces, and extrude faces into solids. You can change the colors of things. Now this is just kind of a silly little table and chair setup that we're making just to kind of showcase what it can do. You can pick up a camera. You can take a picture. You can then place that picture within the environment. There's various Booleaning options. So this is kind of on the fringe of gamification. I mean, it's using game technology, but it's not really. And you can see our mesh calculation wasn't perfect. But you know, I don't know that you could really call this a game, but it uses game technology, so I included it. And part of going back to that original mantra of um, inventing and innovating through play, a lot of what we're trying to do is create tools that are fun to use, so that it's more work feels less like work, and kind of gamifying the work life, so that you have the it feels like you're playing a game while you're designing in this case a dining room set for someone. Um, so you can draw a spline, you can then extrude that spline into a curved surface. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. Yeah, there's point manipulation and all that. And this is all our proprietary mesh engine that we built for this. So that took a lot of time. We got into a lot of user interface design, which was a fun kind of manifestation of a lot of stuff we've been talking about, thinking about how you can use watches to pull up information about designing. And then, we started working with a musical technology who said, well, if these virtual objects emitted sound, if they had physical properties, we could create a sound studio and have concerts inside VR where you are designing instruments and playing these unique instruments, and people can come watch and whatnot. So that is something that we were kind of playing with there right at the end, kind of right before we discontinued development on Second Studio. But like I said, all of this is available on GitHub for open source download if it's something that you want to play with. Just the last thing real fast. This is Affinity Space. This is our current project. And so back 2019, we were looking at creating location-based entertainment centers, which when you use LBE as a term, you immediately think about stuff like trampoline parks, maybe laser tag, maybe arcades, bowling alleys, right? Those are all types of location-based entertainment. And what we started looking at is how do we create location-based entertainment that is actually location-based education. And so you're going to this place because maybe they've got a rock wall, maybe they've got some super powerful computers so that you can, engage in esports with your friends. Maybe they've got a robotics lab where you can learn how to, or you can explore, have fun playing with robots and stuff like that. But that there's actually a curriculum that's built on top of it. And we were looking at the future of the marketplace and saying, we have this evolution from these regional malls to these lifestyle centers, and now we have all of these shows and festivals. Kind of how does this play into that evolution? And specifically as it plays into the evolution of education, we're going from the agrarian or the industrial model of education. We're moving into more modern education, like Montessori, Waldorf, progressivism, things like that, towards the future of education, things like alt school, con school, etc., where it's more tech-based. So how does this play a role within that? And what is our competitive landscape? What is our programmatic breakdown for these places? And how does that have a hook back into the curriculum? What's the architectural space look like? What is the digital infrastructure for this? What is the, how do we organize our content? We were looking at rhizomatic learning and basically having these like tech trees of skills that you have to level up through in order to access the more highly developed portions of the content that's available. We did a whole business model off of it, an operational strategy, and we have a rollout plan and kind of all this stuff. And this brings me to my last slide, which is this is our platform that we developed pre-COVID, and it shows the user, the participant layer, the interface layer, the address layer, which is our systems and our protocols, the city layer, which is all of our envelopes. So whether it's a physical space that you go into or it's a virtual space that you go into, how do we begin to organize those along a horizontal layer? And then our cloud layer, which is all of our ubiquitous services that are supporting all of these various embodiments of the platform. And so what this allowed us to do is all of this stuff that we're looking at here, let me get back to a picture. All of this stuff that we're looking at here is all pre-COVID. So we came to a grinding halt in March of 2020 when everything shut down on this, because we had this whole team spun up and we had all of this stuff that we were planning on doing. We're talking to fundraising sources and so forth. But because we had conceived of everything as a part of a platform, we were able to just very easily pivot and just shift immediately from a location-based entertainment to an online community. So we built Affinity Space Online. That is it's an online community that has a series of challenges that are available for you to put together. You basically put together a team and you could solve that challenge. And what we're working on now is actually putting together using shipping containers to put together mobile pop-up physical affinity spaces that act as kiosks for that online space. We're calling them affinity rooms instead of affinity spaces. And we're looking at how we can go even further towards the education part of it, even further away from entertainment, even closer to education, specifically in the United States, where with online learning, we're seeing a huge increase in projected failing rates for freshmen entering high school in math and English. And that may be due to underserved communities that don't have access to high speed broadband internet connections. Maybe both parents have been laid off and they're at home all day, which is maybe contributing to a less than conducive environment for learning, so on and so forth, right? And so by making this platform and all of its various components available in a pop-up kiosk that can be deployed to a community, maybe parked in like a Walmart parking lot or a community park or something where the students are, so that they don't have to get on a bus and go to a school in order to have some time with others, but there's something in their communities, and we're seeing a lot of support for that. So that is our current objective, and we've got a great team working on it, and I look forward to being able to share more with you guys in the near future. That's it for the slides that I have. We can go to questions if you want, Marie, or we can, I've got some time if we want to try and get that game up and going and kind of go into some of those spaces, or just whatever you guys want to do. I've got about another 30 minutes.
Okay, Nels, that was super interesting. Thank you very much, and very relevant for our unit. Maybe we can take some questions and then get to testing. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds great. Does anybody have any questions? Everybody's quiet. I will ask the first question. How close is the affinity space to realization? I mean, I know that it is sort of yeah, it is kind of like ideal project at the moment, but you say you are receiving a lot of support for that. I mean, are you already receiving some commercial support, or is it?
Yeah, we are in kind of unexpected ways. So there's nobody writing a check and saying, "Hey, go build this." But what we are
Mhm,
getting, so I'm going to actually go back to that slide real fast. So if we look at this platform
mhm,
and we look at, and I'm sorry that these are so hard to read. I was trying to find a higher resolution of this, and I didn't find one in the time that I had. But each one of these nodes of this platform is an opportunity for
mhm,
funding and development. So where we are finding just a huge amount of support right now is here in this sorry, this one right here, here in this idea of developing a our own building system for mobile expandable homes. So create, we're actually not using shipping containers. We're using a proprietary building system that we designed, and
mhm,
we're doing that together with a developer that is looking at creating a housing system for um, disaster. Maybe it's disaster relief. Maybe it's short-term infill residential on brownfield sites. Maybe it's housing for migrant workers in seasons during harvest and things like that. Um, and so we're creating this. We've designed this building system, and we are in the process of actually setting up our own. Well, we're beginning the process of setting up our own manufacturing facility to actually manufacture our own units, and those housing units will also be the containers for this content. So that is moving forward very quickly. And once we have an inventory of empty mobile pods, basically, it will be very simple for us to prototype these experiences, just kind of using our own means. Um, at the same time, along the system and protocol here, we have Affinity Core, which is kind of our education component. And we have some new, this is a very old graphic. We have some new uh, um, uh, structure that's going into what is the content, how is the content organized, and what are the interfaces into that content that we're working with an exciting team on. And so that's moving forward very quickly as well. And so basically, once we have um, these pods available, we're going to just park one, in my driveway, and we're just going to start putting stuff in it, and we're just going to kind of do it as part of a grassroots movement. And that's what I was so that for me, um, what last year taught me is that you really need a grassroots movement to do any of this
mhm,
sort of stuff. That going and trying to secure funding from venture or from developers was just not really a viable option. We'd done a number of startup companies and startup ventures over the past 7-8 years, and it's just too hard to find a funding source that aligns with your with
mm,
our position. So finding a way that we can create something ourselves, and just kind of getting it online, getting people involved, and getting funding for what we can get funding for, and then kind of bootlegging that and using it to develop it ourselves is the way that we're
mhm.
going with it.
And generally, the project is not for profit, or is it for profit?
It's for profit, yeah.
For
And
profit.
so um, the vast majority of the work that we do is for profit. Um,
Mhm,
and And we do that because it simplifies everything. The second that we're trying to do a nonprofit, we have all of these government regulations. It also makes it nearly impossible to raise money because you're only raising money at that point from people that are giving you donations, not investment. And we didn't want to limit ourselves. So we are, yeah, everything that I've shown today is for profit.
Thanks. So who has a question? Please go ahead.
I just really want to try them, like try the ones we've seen, to be honest.
Okay. Okay, so shall we go to testing then?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, let's go ahead to testing.
So, oops, I didn't want to do that. So I sent out a link this morning, which I meant to do last week. I apologize for the late notice. But if, let's pull up the chat here. Thank you, Marga. So when you have this link, you can click this download core button, and it's a pretty large program. They actually, so Manticore Games that produces this was involved in teaching this studio. They were on our reviews and made themselves available throughout the semester for questions, and just can't really say enough about the people at this organization. They've been extremely helpful, and I look forward to working with them again soon, hopefully. They just got $18 million to develop this out into a more integrated platform, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they're doing with it. I say that to say that there's some changes happening, so you may encounter some bugs that I don't know about. But once you download Core and you go to this link, you can click play here, and that will start the game. And you spawn in what's called the South Gallery of SCI-Arc. There are two. So this area that we're looking at is where the thesis pit typically is, which is the big room where all the students that are going through thesis sit in one big open space. But we open it out, or we close it out into individual studios just for the sake of this. You can walk through these mirrors, and it will take you to different places in the world. So in this case, this was showing, this was showing how you can carve away at the landscape to create, space inside of the world. I'm actually going to go, oh, it looks like someone else is, so you see in the bottom left, I have that little blue dot on my radar. That's telling me that there's another person here. Oh, we've got someone joining us. I'm pretty sure this is a private server, so I'm hoping it's one of our people. But there have been times where we've been raided by others, and that's
Yeah,
not
I just
necessarily
tried
fun.
to join, but if I do it, then I can't see the Zoom, so I like logged out.
Oh, okay. Well, I think if you put your Zoom on, there's a way to do this in oh, oops. I think there's a way to, again, this has changed a lot just in the last few weeks, but there's a way to do it in windowed mode so that it doesn't take up the full screen. And yeah, I'll have to look for that. I'm sorry, I don't know where that is. Is it in video maybe? Yeah, so if you go to this view and you click the hamburger stack up here and you go to settings, you can go full screen mode windowed, and then you should be able to snap that window to one side or the other and be able to see both if you would like to do that.
All right.
So this is the outside of SCI-Arc, and obviously SCI-Arc isn't sitting on a carpet of pink grass. there's a big parking lot here, but what there is here is a pavilion. So this pavilion was kind of similar to the pavilion that exists, and so we built this as just kind of like a showcase of like, hey, how do you make architecture out of capsules, right? Because inside Core, you don't get to model something in Rhino and then bring it in and texture it. All of everything that you see was built using the primitives that exist inside Core. So whether that's cubes or spheres or pyramids or whatever, and they're just kit bashed together. So we did that as just kind of a showcase. And so you can go through any one of these showcases. Whoops. So this one's kind of fun, new physics. So you go in and, oh my goodness, I'm at the bottom of this thing. How do I can't get out of here. But if I just fill it with water, oh, well, now I can just swim up, right? So it's one of these kind of fun things that we were really at the heart of this studio was how do we move past a physical only idea of site and being site specific and landscape and things like that, and starting to accept that there's a world that exists within the screen that architects should be involved in, right? That we should be developing architectural experiences for the virtual space as well. Should I wait for anybody else to join, or should I just go into some of these worlds? I'm just going to go in. So if you just go up to a chair and you press F, it'll load a new world. And then within the worlds, we made it a condition of their grade to have a way to get back. Now that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it actually exists. So sometimes you kind of have to wander around looking for the portal back to the place, back to SCI-Arc, or else you just close it out and you start it over again. But so we throughout the semester, we had Discord running, so we would communicate, we would talk to each other on Discord, and then we would sorry, I was trying to walk. There we go. We would talk to each other on Discord, and then we hit various channels for sharing information with each other. And in some cases, like this one, he has it set where if you walk off a ledge, you fly, just because that made it more easier to navigate. And then if you want to enter a space, there's glass there. You have to go down and take the elevator up. So if you touch the ground, then you start walking again. So I'm going to go in the elevator, take the elevator up, and now I'm inside of the space there. So these are kind of like the study, the research halls and whatnot. I think I can actually take the elevator up again. Oh, we've got a collision there. Oh, there we go. So is there any world in particular anyone would like me to explore, or just kind of interested in seeing it?
I was kind of interested in seeing the energy one.
Okay, let's do that.
So is it just to experience, like there's nothing really that you have to actually do, like you can just experience them?
So what we were doing, I did not mean to go here. What we were doing was building architecture in them, right? And so they aren't games per se. There's no like stuff for you to go do. We were using game technology to create an architectural experience. In Desmond's project, the energy world, there are coins that you collect. And so we started talking at the very end of the semester about how you might begin to create some more interface with the game world, and you know, this idea of breadcrumbs was used as a navigation tool, but we didn't really. We actually kind of pushed them away from making it too much like a game, because we wanted it to be an architectural experience kind of first and foremost. And for whatever reason, when you tell students that they're designing games, you end up having people running around with machine guns on the second day of studio, which was something that we were very much against. So here you can see I can pick up these little, oh, maybe I can't pick them up. Maybe I can just follow them. I couldn't remember how we, but yeah, so there's these little breadcrumbs that take you places. And so here I can put on my energy suit, and now my, you know, now I'm able to, I'm kind of in this protected area right now. And once I put on my energy suit, then I'm able to explore further. So when you're flying up, space is up and control is down, and that will allow you to move. And otherwise it's just WASD inside the worlds. I don't think we went down into the plasma very much in the video, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go over here. And so one thing that you notice is I went from flying to instantly swimming, which was a pretty cool mechanic option for, you know, the studio is not obviously not going to prepare someone for designing a building in the real world in the traditional sense. But what it does do is it constantly asks the question, okay, well, what just happened there? Okay, so we just went from, you know, for all intents and purposes, air to water. So I should be swimming, or should I be flying through the water, or should I be walking through the air, right? And it just kind of like, it was a really interesting way for us to kind of begin looking at all of the stuff that you would counter in a building, but just in a really fun way, you know. So we're no longer talking about, you know, coping details and edges, and where one material meets another from a constructability standpoint. All of a sudden now we're talking about it from, okay, how does that play into the story? How has your story been developed? Sorry, I'm trying to get out of here without falling back down. You know, you need to, if there's a change in materiality, if there's a change in this case reality, then how does your story incorporate that change? How does your physical environment incorporate that change? How does the way that you move incorporate that change, and so forth? So this blue laser is the portal back to the home world. So you know, this is open, this is online, anyone can go play it. And there's many other projects that I didn't go into today. So if you'd like to spend some time exploring them, they're pretty cool. And these are multiplayer, so if you guys all get together, you can go from one to the next and, you know, talk to each other, for example, while you're in there, and you can create a character and, you know, have a party in Tree World or whatever you want to do. All right, I got about 5 minutes. Are there any other questions?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to, because I have played a lot of VR game, you know. For example, Half-Life, Alex, and VR chart like this. So I just want to share you a little inspiration from I play that game, and I watched your work. I have such inspiration of if we can make some low price touch feeling equipment besides the equipment just can see and hear. You know what I mean? And just like even a touch feeling from 1 or 2 finger, that will be more interaction in the VR game, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I'm a software guy. So from a hardware perspective, I'm the absolute wrong person to be talking to about that stuff. You might check out Tesla Suit. They're based in oh, where are they? I think they might be Polish, something like that. But they are a full zip-up haptic suit that gives you, and they kind of, their branding is that you can give someone a virtual hug, and you know, they have a lot of connections to the neuroscience community and kind of looking at virtual reality as an empathy engine. So you might, you might explore that as one, but you know, if that's something that you think the world needs, you should go out and build it yourself. Yeah, it's not that hard.
Yeah, I think it's a future development direction. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna wait and catch this elevator and take you guys up into one of these pods real quick. Any other questions?
I think some of these scenarios aren't that far-fetched. Like, the world is pretty crazy at the moment. So I feel like this is a nice way to explore, you know, like different realities, which, which could actually happen. Like, I know it's supposed to be very creative and, but I think it has a place alongside like practical architecture.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, the virtual reality is, and when I say virtual reality, I don't mean headsets.
Yeah.
I think our lives that are spent online, whether it's on Facebook or inside of a video game world or whatever, is just as real as the time that we spend outside of in real physical space. And so we need to be designing those spaces just as we would be designing our physical environments. And it's kind of, if architects don't do it, then someone else will. And I think we are we're the masters of our craft, and so we should be the ones that are telling the world how we inhabit virtual spaces, not software designers. So I just wanted to show you the inside of one of these little pods. So there's, he's got a little house that he built out and whatnot. Core is a super fun program. Oops, that. Core is a super fun program. You can build all of this stuff just using primitives. It's just kit bashing everything together. So you might explore that a little bit if this type of work interests you. Well, Maria, I hope that was helpful. I hope that
it was very helpful. It was super interesting. Thank you so much. Please, everybody, give applause to Nels with the reactions on the bottom. Thank you so much. It was really great. I hope to see you soon, wherever on the world in the near future.
Yeah, me too. Me
yeah.
too. Thank you for the invite and for your patience in scheduling this for me. I know it happened later in the year than you wanted to, but I'm glad we could make it work.
It was brilliant, and I think the timing was good as well. So thank you so much. Was super relevant and super interesting. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.